On the top of what we can see, the pressure seems absolutely decent. I mean, it's a combination of a titanium hull with composite materials. That's something which is basically proven technology. The controls, it's touchscreen technology, the hardened game station controller. Why not? But in submarine technology, it's all about the risk analysis, what can possibly go wrong, and what are the backup systems that you have on board. When you look at the inside of Titan, you don't see many backups. If you were to have a power failure, what just happened to the touch screens? Do you have any backup systems that could come online? Do you have any possibility to basically drop a weight to come back up to the surface? There are many questions that we need to investigate.
Yes, indeed. So, there have been expeditions to the Titanic before this one on the submersible. What, in your mind, might have gone wrong in this particular case?
We've got a few possibilities. I mean, Titan is a submersible, so Titan depends on a mothership. But Titan doesn't seem to be a tethered submersible. So once Titan is launched, she is basically on her own. So meaning that Titan runs on batteries, you could have a power blackout. Titan could have suffered a catastrophic failure on the electrical systems, resulting into a fire that could not only incapacitate the submarine systems, but also creating some toxic fumes in that very small and confined atmosphere. If you are, poisoning the crew, then what can you do? You cannot vent the poison atmosphere outside. Other possibilities could be, having a flood and catastrophic flood at those depths means instant death. It's basically something like 20 milliseconds. Your brain cannot even process what's happening. One would say it's a merciful death compared to being, something like entangled within the wreck of the Titanic, where you would suffer the depletion of the atmosphere. Because, what can you do if you are entangled? You are 4,000 meters deep. You've got a crushing pressure of more than 4,000 tons on a plate of 1 square meter. And it's not a small feat in terms of engineering capability. And they are far away from the coast. The US Coast Guards and the US Navy don't have, to the best of my knowledge, some ready support systems to launch, not only to localize where Titan can be, but also to rescue her.
Yeah, it's a very difficult area, and it's hard to know how they could even get down to the depths, if it, depending on how far it was able to go down. When they talk about the amount of oxygen on board, from what you're saying, that could be the least of their problems, how much oxygen they have left.
Correct. We know that they've got 96 hours of autonomy. But when we compare that period of time with how much time it will take to have some rescue party to come, to localize where Titan is, and hopefully to help them, that may not be enough. And that's once again assuming that they are still alive in the depths. My most optimistic scenario would be that they suffered from a catastrophic failure, maybe in power, but they could still go back up to the surface with no means of communication or signaling where they are. That would be the optimistic scenario, drifting on the surface till a maritime patrol aircraft or a ship finds them. The other scenarios are much more pessimistic, to be honest.
Not good at all. You talked about sort of the submersible as it is. Is there an industry standard? Are there existing programs that sort of monitor what is acceptable for a vessel like this to go to the depths of the Titanic?
It's a very niche sector. I mean, you don't have a lot of submersibles that can do that. Even when you look at military submarines, no military submarines would go below 500 meters. And military submarines are the kind of vehicles that are the most numerous. So going below that, you mostly find some remotely operated vehicles. without people on board, because that's complex and that's risky to have people on board. And even though you have some classification societies that will give you some guidance and some rules on how to best do things, there is not a lot of documentation on how to ensure a very high level of safety due to the low number of vehicles that can go to this depth. So it's a very bespoke and homemade technology. When you think about James Cameron willing to dive onto the Titanic or willing to go into the Mariana Trench, James Cameron said he couldn't find anyone in the US to help him design and build a submersible. He had to come to Australia the deep sea challenger made by Ron Allen to do that, because no one was willing to take the risk in the US.
Yes, and it was a very different vessel that James Cameron used. I understand too, anyone who went on board had to sign a waiver, which I guess too is an indication that they were going at great cost. It was $250,000 to go on one of these expeditions, but there was no guarantees here.
It's always a risk to go to these depths, as it's a niche sector, I am not sure that the insurer would be willing to take the risk for all these small tourist vehicles. Unfortunately, what is happening to Titan shows that there is still a lot to be done in that sector to give some guarantees to tourists of the depth that it's safe. To some extent, it's riskier to go down deep in the bottom of the ocean than to go into space. When you look at the number of people that walked onto the moon and you compare that with the people that went below 4,000 meters, it's not a big difference.
Yeah. Eric, a sobering conversation, and it is going to, I guess, grip us for some days to come. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.